What is going on, everyone? It's Sean with another Tesla video, and I've been wanting to do this one for the last week or so since I've gotten back from the semi-truck event, but life is just moving along very quickly. So I want to get this out, and I want to provide some of my thoughts and insight, my first impressions of the semi-truck, and not only that, but their one more thing, Apple-style reveal that they showed off the Tesla next gen Roadster. And so I'm going to break this up into two videos. First video, this one will be about the semi-truck, my thoughts on the event and the semi-truck in particular. I also want to do a specific video, separate video on the next gen Roadster, because that one in itself is pure awesomeness. So let's just start off with the event. And first I want to say thank you to everyone who's used my referral code. I wouldn't have been able to go to this event without you all. So if you've used my referral code, thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep doing that because I want to go to these events. In fact, I was telling someone a few days ago that after attending this event, I feel even more bought into what Tesla is doing by I don't know what it was, if it was just being around other like-minded people or seeing Elon Musk in person or seeing the products in person. I just feel more bought in, and I'm ready to kind of take my advocacy to the next level. So thank you for those who use my referral code. By the way, if you're not a subscriber to my YouTube channel, please do that. Hit that subscribe button down below. And my referral code for those that are in the market for new or inventory SRX, that's in the description of the video. All right, so let's dive in. So first off, really cool. I ended up inviting one of the host or co-host of Talking Tesla podcast. If you haven't checked that one out, do that. It's on iTunes and probably all the other major podcasting platforms. Tom Wolfson, shout out to you. Had fun hanging out with you and getting to know you a little bit more. But fantastic podcast on all things Tesla, Elon Musk, SpaceX, Solar City, anything that Elon Musk has his hands in. And we went to the event. We got there a little bit early, so what we ended up doing was going to check out a few things around the facility, because where they were having the event in Hawthorne, which is a suburb of Los Angeles, that's also the same place where they have the SpaceX facilities. So they have the Tesla Design Center and SpaceX facilities basically right next to each other. So we went to go check out I think it's the Falcon 9 rocket, the very first time that they landed that rocket on the barge. They've now put that up on display at one of the corners where their facilities are at. So that was phenomenal. You realize the sheer scale of what they're doing when you are ground level looking directly up at that rocket. And it's just really cool to know that that thing went up into space, or more or less. I'm not a space guy, so all the space fanatics will probably correct me on that. It's technically not space. But anyways, so amazing looking at that. And then as we turn the corner, we were going to go take a look at the Hyperloop track that SpaceX has built, and they're running those competitions. We ran into a Model 3. Now, this was my first Model 3 sighting, so I was very excited, and I think this was Tom's first sighting as well. And we spent maybe 10 or 15 minutes walking around that thing, looking at the quality build, the fit and finish, and it's as impressive in person as it is by photos and video, and even more. And, you know, from what I could tell, and I'm speaking from someone who's got an early Model S with build quality issues, or maybe not as tight as it could be, but it looked really solid. There were hardly any misaligned panels. It was maybe just some slight misalignment, but you would barely notice if you weren't looking for it, or you wouldn't even notice, most likely. So, fantastic car. And the actual cabin of the car looks to be about the same size as Model S, you know, door width wise. It's just that the the front and the rear of the car, where the trunk and the frunk are a little bit more condensed and shorter. It's a fantastic car, and I think anyone who's got a pre-order on one is going to love it. So after we finished gawking at the Model 3, we went to go take a look at the Hyperloop track. And it's really, really cool to see. I mean, that thing, we didn't walk the whole thing because I think it's a mile or maybe more long. But really cool to see some of the things that they're doing there. Once we got done there, we made our way into the waiting area where they had tons of other people who were attending the event, press, Tesla owners, guests, and they had a cash bar. They had a DJ playing, and then after a while they let everyone into the actual facility where they were hosting the event. And per usual, Tesla started about 30 minutes late from what they had originally said. So the event began, and it starts off by these two semi-trucks driving down the airport runway where this event was being held. And out of one of the trucks, and first of all, it was just really cool, crazy cool to see this truck in the flesh. Photos that we had seen, maybe 2 or 3 weeks prior to that, had kind of made their way online. It was really cool to see it in person. So what I'd like to do is talk about some of the stats and numbers that they shared at the event, as well as some numbers that they've shared since the event, and talk about, was I right or wrong with some of my predictions that I did in a previous video. So first one is 0 to 60 in 20 seconds with a 80,000 pound gross vehicle weight. So this is actually carrying the maximum capacity cargo. This one I think I think it's flashy, but I don't think that truck drivers are going to really be focusing on how fast they can get to 60 miles an hour. Now, what this does tell me is how much actual power there is, how much torque there is in this semi-truck, which truckers do care about. The torque, the power behind the wheel that you get as you accelerate, I think that's really, really going to matter. And I think it's going to be a fantastic difference. Now, to get that 0 to 60 in 20 seconds, they've got 4 independent motors on the back axles of those 4 wheels, which I think is interesting. So it's basically like a quad motor. Tesla has dual motor for their S and their X. This is a quad motor, and they could potentially in the future, as they iterate this product, be what is that, 6 motors? I don't even know what that's called. Put it in the comments if you know what 6 motors. 2 is dual, 4 is quad, sextuplet. So the fact that they've got 4 independent motors, I think is quite fantastic. Elon talked about how this is applicable to if a trucker's on the road and maybe one of the motors goes down or bad, you have 3 other ones independently operating. So you've got some redundancy there if you're on the road, and the ability to be able to get that freight from point A to point B, which is really cool. With a diesel semi-truck, if that engine goes bad, you're on the side of the road, losing money, waiting for a tow truck to come and pick you up. The next stat that I'll share about is a 2 kilowatt hour per mile energy consumption. Now, I haven't compared the numbers or translated this into something that's comparable to a diesel truck, but I guess it sounds pretty cool. Next one is the drag coefficient at 0.36. Now, how did this compare to what my prediction was in my video from a week or 2 ago? Most or many diesel trucks have I think a 0.6 to a 1.0 drag coefficient. In my video of predictions, I was sort of thinking that they would figure out how to get it similar to the S or X, which is at a 0.24 drag coefficient, and the Model 3 is at I believe a 0.21 drag coefficient. They didn't quite get there. What they did get was a 0.36, almost double the efficiency of a diesel semi-truck. So still very, very impressive. And when you look at this thing in photos or in person, you get it. It makes sense as to why it's so efficient. All right, so what about some of those other specs? This is one that Elon talked about in the presentation. You can go up a 5% grade if you're driving up a mountain or a big hill. Normal diesel trucks kind of tap out with power at 45 miles an hour. The Tesla Semi at a 5% grade will be able to go 65 miles an hour. So you'll be able to go highway speeds going up this hill. And he didn't talk about this, but I think it's a huge, huge selling point. If you think about, okay, if you're going to go up, you're most likely going to have to go down at some point. Can you imagine the regenerative braking on 4 motors and how much energy that's going to send back into the battery as you're coasting down? I can't wait to get some real-time results on how much range this is generating from the regenerative braking. So super, super cool. Range, this was another one of my predictions that I did in a previous video. Now, I predicted that they would come out with 2 battery sizes, which I was correct in predicting, but where I was off was the range. I predicted a 500-mile battery and a 1,000-mile battery. What they came out with was a 300-mile or a 500-mile battery. So I was right with one of those, but I was thinking that they would produce something that was a little bit greater. But this makes sense. 80% of semi-truck usage is short haul and regional day trips. Where you need that longer range would be your cross-country long haul trips that span multiple days. I think now, knowing these battery sizes, that what they'll do is they'll try and address the majority of the market, which they did with this 300 and 500 mile battery sizes. If they can make it a success, which most likely they will, then they'll release a long haul, either a larger battery, much larger battery to address that 1,000-mile market, or they'll, as I predicted in my previous video, they'll start to roll out battery swapping, which I think will be a really, really strong play. Fuel savings, this is something that I sort of touched on in the last video, but really didn't have too much context for. So they're predicting over the life, I think, which is 1 million miles, $200,000 fuel savings over the life of the vehicle, which is really cool. The price point, now this is quite remarkable here. For that 300-mile range battery, $150,000, and the 500-mile range battery, $180,000. And to reserve this, you just got to put down $20,000. And they also, which I think is interesting, are producing a Founders Series version at $200,000. So it's an interesting play here, but nonetheless, $150,000 to $180,000 or $200,000, I think is really interesting. I believe, and I haven't done a lot of deep research into this, that your average diesel truck is around $100,000. So you're talking about a $50,000 difference. I did actually get a chance to see this truck in person, not only from the exterior, but I got to look inside of it. I walked up the steps, and I physically laid eyes on the interior. So let's talk a little bit about my impressions of the interior. It actually looks very similar style-wise to the Model 3. It's very simplistic. They've used that same HVAC system in the Model 3. They've used it for the semi-truck, so you have that one kind of seamless display of fan vents across the entire dash. This is something really cool. So they've got 2 LCD screens to the left and to the right of the steering wheel. And again, it has a very Model 3-esque feel, very simplistic. From this particular one that I was in, it looks like they're intending on building all those buttons that you would have in a normal diesel semi-truck they're going to put it on touchscreen. The seat is actually in the middle of the cab, whereas traditional semi-trucks, the driver's seat is off to the left, and they've actually got another seat to the right, similar to a normal automobile. So this, I think, is an interesting move. You've got one seat in the very middle, and then there was at least one foldable seat that was attached to the wall of the cab that you could fold down and someone could sit there. I think that there was a second one in the back as well. It would seem natural to put another one in there, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure how that foldable seat will feel over a longer trip, but nonetheless, they've got at least two seats, and there might be a third one in there on that back wall. I want to talk a little bit about the software. The software on the two LCDs, I think, is something that is going to be a monumental shift in the way that truckers run their business from the cab. Now, I had a chance to talk with a close family member, the one who I spoke with in the previous video, and this is something that I think is really, really interesting. So to date, there's a lot of different softwares that run different things, and the actual maker of the truck does not, from what I could gather, does not have anything to do with the telematics displaying how fast the truck is going, how hard they're braking. They don't have anything to do with monitoring drivers' logs, they call them. So as a part of the Department of Transportation regulations, drivers have to log how long they're doing particular activities. So I had a chance to just kind of make some notes as I discussed with my family member over the holidays here. You've got 4 different settings. The first one is off-duty. The second one is sleeper berth, which is sleeping or resting in the cab. You've got on-duty but not driving, which could be loading, inspecting the vehicle, or fueling up. And then you've got driving. And so you have to keep track of these things. Now, a lot of third-party companies have, introduced like tablets where you can log how long you're doing these particular things. But where I think Tesla will actually dominate is creating this all-encompassing full circle integration with the truck. So not only will you get the truck, but you will also get the software, built-in software, to manage your logs and notate how long you're driving, how long you're resting or sleeping, how long you're taking to fill up and inspect the truck, and so on, instead of this segmented, compartmentalized approach that the trucking industry has right now. So that, I think, is something that's really cool that Tesla will be able to manage from those touchscreens. Let's transition to the exterior. So I think there's some interesting notes about this. In the presentation, Elon showed off there's actually a frunk in this semi-truck that you can store stuff in. I don't know if it's going to be terribly useful. Maybe you put your smelly clothes or leftover food in there. I don't know, but my guess is most drivers will keep their stuff in cab. On one of the models, they did not have side mirrors. They had cameras. On the second model, they had the big mirrors, and they also had cameras that were closer to the fairings, towards the top. And what I predict these cameras will do is be able to project backwards what is seen on those cameras and present the video feeds on the 2 touchscreens. From what I could tell when I was watching some of the videos replay and when I was in the truck, was that as you would expect, the camera that would be over the left shoulder would be on the left touchscreen, and the camera over the right shoulder would be on the right touchscreen, and give you full visual picture of your blind spots, which solves the problem of the cockpit being in the middle and not being able to see blind spots to the left and to the right. The camera should solve that problem. I also noticed that Tesla took the door handles from the Model 3 and built them into the semi-truck. So that's really, really cool. One thing that's different about these doors is that they actually open the opposite direction of a car or a typical semi-truck. So And this is something that I forgot to mention maybe about the interior that is unique to Tesla that I know of, is that you can actually stand fully up inside of the cab without having to hunch over. Most cabs you have to kind of get in, and you don't have the opportunity to stand up unless you're in a sleeper section of a cab. The two trucks that they did show at the event were only day trucks, so they did not have a sleeper. I'm sure that's something that they'll add if they introduce a third version of the Tesla semi-truck. Some more thoughts about the exterior. The fairing, the side fairings, were adjustable. So as the truck turned, you could see the fairings along the side of the truck adjust as well to give more clearance. And this, I think, is pretty unique to Tesla as well. But the real purpose is the fuel efficiency. So as the air is traveling past the sides of the truck, it's not traveling into the area that's in between the truck and the trailer. You've got the fairings that make that air travel seamless across the entire truck from front to back. You'll notice that the front hood of the truck is very minimal in comparison to traditional semi-trucks, and I think that as well contributes to that drag coefficient of 0.36. So I'm extremely excited about this. I think not only is this going to be a cost savings for the trucking industry, but I think we could see this whole nother subculture of Tesla owners who buy these trucks to haul their RVs, their third wheels, and people take these on their road trips to go around and see different sites. This would be really cool. I suppose if you had an RV that you attach to the back, you wouldn't really need that sleeping area in the actual truck. So overall, I'm super excited. I can't wait. And it sounds like there's already been some companies that have put their deposits down on this. For example, I've seen JB Hunt. I believe Walmart put a reservation on some. And I've also seen a grocery store chain in Canada who's purchased some as well. Two of the three that I mentioned talked about the environment, the positive environmental impact of investing into the Tesla trucks. Okay, so that concludes the first section of my recap of the semi-truck event. The next video will talk about my first impressions of the next-gen Roadster, which I got to see in the flesh, in person, and I can't wait to share those thoughts with you. So thanks so much for tuning in. Please hit subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and my referral code for purchasing an S or an X is down in the video description. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.